Hello, listener, and welcome to Book 4, Chapter 7 of Bite-Sized Tales, the audio flash fiction podcast. In this week's story, officers on a generation ship with a colonization mission receive an unanticipated transmission. When We Were Here. Written by Dot Moore. Read by Chris Hussey. Ship log entry 31A, Commander Victor Porter, badge number 48154, acting Senior Planetary Geoscientist. Good morning. It is 4:47 a.m. Terran Central Time. I am the first to awake, and I have already completed the first round of stasis recalls. Both Captain Paul Upchurch and Commander Quinn Marcus were successfully activated. I confirmed, based on current recorded star charts, we are less than 12 hours from reaching to Terra 9. These next couple of hours are crucial to readying ourselves for the colonization efforts. Both myself and Dr. Wyatt researched the quadrant and determined that this particular planetary body is 76.3% habitable. However, there are necessary physical surveys still required before we can launch the colony. We should arrive by Terran date September 24th, 3026. Shit. I pushed away from my console and slammed my hand against the door panel. The scene in the science wing was a rush of bodies scrambling in chaos. I made eye contact with Dr. Wyatt. "What's happening? What's going on?" She paused and a wide smile plastered her face. She rushed to my side and grabbed me by my shoulders. "We received a transmission from the surface." My brow furrowed in confusion. "What? That's not possible. Lenny, we checked. We sent drones to monitor the surface for 5 years and nothing came back. What do you mean we've received a transmission?" Her smile never wavered. "I haven't listened to it yet. It could be nothing." She paused and took a deep breath. "Vic, do you know what this means?" I steadied my reaction. "It means we were wrong, Lenora. I'm not so sure that's a good thing." She shook her head and pulled me into a hug, wrapping her arms tightly around me and whispered along my neck, "Sweetheart, we're home." I relaxed my shoulders and returned the sentiment before observing the chaos around us. I cleared my throat and took a deep breath before moving to the intercom panel along the outside of the science wing. "Attention Fortuna Station, this is Commander Porter. All officers please report to the Core in 15 minutes for briefing. Any crew not currently engaged in stasis recovery should report to their positions immediately. Thank you." I adjusted my jacket, only for Lenora to aggressively grab my shoulders and squeeze them as we walked forward together towards the Core. The anticipatory energy radiating off her was palpable. My concern didn't seem to dampen her spirits. For as long as she and I have worked together, I've always been the level-headed one. But her hope and determination are absolute necessities in times like this. She keeps me going, gives me perspective where I truly need it. The short trek around Fortuna Station to the Core gave me moments to prepare. Though Captain Upchurch is leading the debrief, Lenora and I would be questioned intently for somehow missing this during our initial research of the site. I'm still not convinced, but Lenny is far too thorough to let something like this deter us from the mission. We round the corner and I rest my palm against the panel to be scanned for entry. Lenora is practically bouncing with excitement. But when the door hisses open, we are greeted with Captain Upchurch hurtling something from his operating station across the room and catch the last breath of him shouting. He turns to both of us as we enter the room. "It's about damn time you two got here. Care to explain to me how the hell we're getting transmissions from what was supposed to be an uninhabited planet? Who dropped the ball here?" Lenny steps forward and begins to speak. "Paul, I think you need to—" "Captain," he interrupts, "you will address me appropriately. We are not friends at this moment, Dr. Wyatt. You may have put this entire colony in jeopardy. As your commanding officer, I expect you to disclose any and all findings immediately. You and Commander Porter have 4 hours to take a small crew to the surface and find out exactly where the transmission came from and whether or not this mission is still attainable. Go." I clear my throat. "Captain, I haven't yet heard the transmission. In order to get a full understanding of what it is we're dealing with, I need all the information up front myself. I turned to face Lenora. You need to assemble our team, now. Bring a biologist and a climatologist, and find 2 grunts that are willing to put boots on the ground. Dismissed. She furrows her brow at me and scoffs. You're both acting like this is disastrous, when in all actuality, we've just been given assurances that we can survive down there. But fine, I'll assemble the team. We'll have the shuttle ready for departure in an hour. Captain Upchurch interjects. You have 30 minutes. Get your asses in gear. She turns and leaves without a word or glance in my direction, and I know I'm going to pay for this somehow, some way, later down the road, but now is not the time to worry about that. I address Upchurch. Captain, the transmission, can you pull it up on comms for me, please? He interacts with his comms panel, and a hologram of a waveform appears above his desk. He taps another icon, and the audio begins playing. At first there is only static that crackles, but then a faint voice comes through. It sounds clearly like some form of speech, but not a language I understand. Vaguely Eastern European or Slavic in nature, if I had to describe it. Before the transmission completes, I move to the intercom panel on the wall and page our linguist on board. Will Mira Tran please report to the Corps immediately? Within the next few minutes, the remaining officers on board and Ms. Tran arrive at the Corps. Captain Upchurch forwards the transmission to my comm, then begins the debrief. He dismisses Mira and me to begin dissecting the audio. As we walk down the halls of Fortuna Station, she pulls on a set of headphones over her ears and replays the message over and over again. Before we reach the science wing, she stops abruptly and grabs me by my forearm. I need a comm station. I think I know what this is. We settle at my desk and she pulls up the audio file and starts splicing apart the waveform. Mira, I need you to explain what you're doing and what you think you've found. Upchurch will want details as soon as I can provide them. She pauses, then sighs. You were right to get me. This is human, but it's old. A long-forgotten language. I only thought to consider it because of the cadence of the speech. It's clearly a woman's voice, but she's not just speaking, Vic. She's singing. I turn to look at Mira with confusion. What does that have to do with anything, or why is that odd? She shrugged. It's not inherently odd, but for this to be the only transmission coming from the planet we're supposed to be inhabiting, the message is foreboding. My shoulders slumped in exasperation. Mira, get to the point. The song. What is she singing? What is it about? Mira turned back to the comms panel and began playing the sequences she spliced apart from the static background. The melody was repetitive with a waltz tempo and carried a sadness in tone. I paused the audio. Cross-reference this. Find the exact lyrics in translation, please. I need to report, and when I return, I need answers. You have 30 minutes. I rose to my feet and opened the door to the science wing to meet Lenora standing in front of me. Her expression was hardened, not nearly the joyous feature she carried moments ago. We're ready, but the planet is still several hours out of range for the landers. We'll need more time. Tell El Capitan that he's going to need to extend the turnaround because we aren't even at Tatura 9 yet. I fixed my jaw in frustration. Lenny, try not to make this more of an issue than it already is. She scoffed and turned away from me, arms folded across her chest. I moved forward to brush my hand softly from her shoulders, down her arms. Go, talk to Mira, help her with the transmission. I need to give Upchurch our status. I'll be back shortly. Lenora adjusted to look past me into my office quarters and slipped around me without another word and immersed herself in the work Mira was tackling. I sighed and headed towards the Corps, hoping that with what little we've learned in the past hour, we're still on the right path to establishing this colony. Before I rounded the corner to the Corps, I paused to pull up my personal comm. Personal log entry 74C, Commander Victor Porter, badge 48154, acting senior planetary geoscientist. This wasn't a fluke. We were meant to find this transmission. But why now? First of all, I'm reading this story because Dot's voice was a little bit under the weather, so this is actually her author's note, so I'm going to read it as if it was her reading it. This is part one of what will be a two-part story about a generation ship that is headed towards a heavily researched planet to establish new colonization efforts. I had every intention of trying to fit it all into one story, but when I started to develop the dialogue between the characters, I realized there was more to the story that I wanted to tell. Part 2 will be the next of my story to be released, so I hope you've enjoyed it so far. This chapter of Bite-Sized Tales has been brought to you under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Intro and outro music is Fantasy Motion by Alexander Nakarada, provided under a Creative Commons 4.0 license. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we greatly appreciate reviews and recommendations to your friends. For more information about our authors, visit bitesizedtales.com or follow us on Instagram at bite_size_tales. We look forward to reading to you next time.